Hey guys, what's going on? Steven back again, and I'm back with another 40k video from Bricky. So I am continuing on with his every single Warhammer 40k faction re-explained part 2. My part 2 as well, because I am breaking this video up into smaller videos just because this video is like an hour and a half long. So I figured it'd just be easier to do some smaller videos. So I have been enjoying these videos. I like the way he's presenting everything and not just going faction after faction after faction. He's kind of telling like the lore of 40k while weaving in each faction and stuff like that, like I've said before in all the previous videos. So yeah, here I am starting off with the Dark Mechanicum and Chaos Knights. So yeah, let's just jump right in, shall we? Here we go.
Ruinous powers claimed during the Horus Heresy extended beyond just the Space Marines and the Primaries. Mars itself was subject to a revolution that saw half of them fall to chaos as well, and some of the once royal knight houses saw themselves swearing fealty to the dark gods. The falling of these factions allows for the war machine of chaos to continue uninterrupted and to have firepower equal to that of the Imperium itself.
Of course.
The Dark Mechanicum, as the name suggests, is the chaos-affiliated branch of the Mechanicus, and have a lot more free reign, much like the freedoms of the Chaos Space Marines.
Really?
The seeds of the Dark Mechanicum are planted
What type
fairly
of free
early,
reign
because some
does
of
the Dark Mechanicum have that they
not really seeing the
Mechanicum
Emperor as the
doesn't have?
Omnissiah immediately, and Horus exploited this to allow the schism to happen a bit more naturally. Unlike their Imperial brothers, the Dark Mechanicum have the ability to invent and innovate. What a concept.
Okay.
While also utilizing forbidden technologies such as the Silica Animus or AI. The Dark Mechanicum do have their own desires to find lost technologies and put them to use, but they're more interested in taking ancient and forbidden technology from Imperial worlds and activating them for their own purposes. Because what good is a bunch of knob and tube wiring if you don't overload it with as many extension cords as possible? However, instead of being clear-cut and more generalized creations, the inventions of the Dark Mechanicum are inherently tied with the warp and its demons.
Of course.
Genetic experimentation and modification and fusion of man and machine are exceptionally common, and no creation is more reflective of this than the demon engines. Instead of regular tanks and vehicles, the demon engines are machines bound with the presence of demons to make them living war machines. Unlike the vehicles of the Imperium, where a Mechanicus priest may be there to aid in its repair,
You got a demon.
Warpsmith sorcerer is there to essentially repair and irritate the demon engine so that it can be a more effective killing machine. In certain factions, like the bitter and siege-loving Iron Warriors, they will lure demons with the promise of glory and easy bloodletting, only to then forcibly trap them into these demonic engines to use as weapons of war against the Imperium.
That's so
Some
shitty.
lesser gods, like Vashtor the Archifage,
Whatever happened to him? Like, what's he doing right now? He's pretty cool looking, but like, what is he doing?
Many demons may sign a pact with Vashtor in the soul forges of the warp, and in doing so are given the weapons of war to kill as much as they can. Should they do so, excellent, you may keep it. Should you not, I hope you enjoy your soul working in the forges for all eternity. That's what you signed with blood and wood. In addition, much like their ties in the Loyalist realm, the Dark Mechanicum and the Chaos Knight houses are deeply intertwined.
Really?
There were, of course, many knight houses that swore fealty and bent the knee to War Master Horus during the heresy, but a good portion of them had no choice, as they were absorbed by warp storms and corrupted into compliance. Many of these Chaos Knights reflect the very early Dark Age technology knights with more corrupted weapons. The Throne Mechanicum, which once had a noble sitting and taking control
That actually looks very
generations
badass.
of previous drivers and taming a beast,
Look at the head,
is
just
now
looks
a
so
saddle-free
cool.
monstrosity
Like a
of
giant
ravage
chain
and
just
hate.
hanging
The
down.
nobles of the Chaos Knights fight to aggravate and bring the machine to their will while combating the corrupted minds of their fallen ancestors. Some of these nobles may do such a good job that they themselves fuse into the throne itself and become one with the knight. If a noble dies, no worries at all. Unlike the Imperial ones that require a pilot, a demon can hop into the cockpit and control it instead. The Night Worlds also
just replace it with a demon.
Where there were once peasants, there are now cultists. And the goal of the Chaos Knights are just as chaotic as the gods they follow. Some are sent to war by the ruinous powers. Others may protect dark mechanical forge worlds, and others still may be so hyped up on the ruinous powers that they are just aimless and reckless, hoping to unravel the fabric of the universe itself. Though the aspect of nobility is still there with the Chaos Knight, but it's hardly the same as it is on the Imperial side. As opposed to a beautiful knightly stallion, the knights here are horrifying and unpredictable monstrosities, fueled in part by the agony of the memories of the ancestors trapped within. An invasion by a house of Chaos Knights is a horrifying.
Oh, of course.
One might ask, how do knights enter the battle? Normally they can be deployed via dropships, the standard way.
That's
But
true.
Imperial Knights can be deployed with a drop key, a gigantic knight key with towers and stuff. Will hurtle towards the surface like a drop pod and be slammed into the ground with an excessively thunderous crash. Then, massive drawbridges slam down,
That's actually kind of cool.
banners unfurl, and huge horns play the song of their people as these lumbering robots charge out of their, again, drop key to fight for the Imperium. So
That's actually kinda cool.
what a warp-fueled version of this could look like.
If you get the opportunity, you should kill yourself.
Chaos Knights have such a presence, the warp fluctuates in their tread. They bring doom, dread, and despair across the battlefield. Warp storms occur overhead, and psychic phenomenon cling to them. A Chaos Knight will arrive either in some warp-debased platform, or perhaps a portal itself, or climb out of a pool of blood as the air gets
That would be
heavy.
kinda
The enemy
badass.
feels a crippling sense
Just
of
imagine
paranoia,
seeing something
and
like
the
this just
sky
crawling
begins
out
to
of a
rain
pool
blood,
of
acid,
blood.
and God knows what. The horrors of the warp have resulted in a dramatic change in technology in the favor of their forces. Though in practice, it is a horror beyond comprehension, their baseline desires don't seem that radical on paper. They are creative builders, working to innovate and improve technology while utilizing anything they can to accomplish their STEM goals. Looking at the dark forces of chaos and the Emperor now on his golden throne, humanity is fractured. The Emperor himself is the guiding light for warp travel for humanity, and in being that exists as a beacon for the entire species. Without him, things would get somehow
Oh,
worse.
yes.
Therefore, he needs his protectors. Where a Thunder Warrior wasn't enough for his and half of his space
custodies.
turned traitor, the Emperor's personal
See,
bodyguards.
I like
are
how he
something else.
weaves everything together.
They are not the fallible Astarians, nor are they a nightmarish concoction of organs and indoctrination. They are built and gene-crafted, with science bordering on magic. They number 10,000 strong, and each of them is a hero. They are you.
Adeptus Custodes.
Rare is the battle where an emperor's custodians outnumber our foes. We are ever beset, surrounded upon all sides by heresy and foulness, just as is Terra itself.
It's kind of crazy that there's
Yet, like the throne will
10,000 of them.
resolute, indefatigable,
Can you just imagine
indomitable. Let the enemy come. Let them darken
how the tables
horizon
would
with
turn
numbers.
if you just sent out,
we
like,
will prevail. Though the emperor sits rotting on
5,000 of them
talons
just to a battle
should be
as an
sure.
army
Talons-
together?
The talons of the emperor.
Like, what
is
would
the
that
name
do to,
given
like,
the
the
most
lore
elite
and stuff
forces
like
at
that?
his disposal. The left hand of his talons comes in the form of the Sisters of Silence, psychic blades that scour the galaxy to claim souls, to fuel the Astronomicon in the form of the Great Tide. 1,000 psychers sacrificed daily to keep the Emperor of Mankind alive, dragged into the black ships of the Silent Sister. Right hand of the Emperor's protectorate, his golden bodyguards that serve him and only him. These are the custodians. While the members of the Space Marines went out to take back the galaxy, the Legio Custodes stood back and kept a close watch over the Emperor himself. The Custodes are, in a sense, similar to Space Marines in that they are genetically modified super soldiers
But-
power armor, but that is where the similarities stop. Their genetic makeup seems to be made from the Emperor
They're just 10
himself,
times
something
upgraded,
like
more
that.
than
The
Space Marines.
precision of their creation predates the development of the Space Marines and even the Primarchs. Unlike Space Marine recruitment, where there's a process undertaken when a subject is at least somewhat grown, a custodian's process begins at infancy.
Oh,
The methods
okay.
in which they are made are a secret. But what is known is that at the very beginning, each custodian was made by the Emperor himself. Regardless of the bioalchemical process, the process is exceptionally long and grueling, and only a handful of selected aspirants make it to the end. Those that do are clad in the most regal and effective armor in the universe.
I mean, that is some badass
Commonly, a
looking armor.
custodian is seen carrying a guardian spear, an utterly yoked up version of the staves the Praetorian Guards of the Emperor in Star Wars had. They are also clad with specific shields and blades, but the most interesting thing with all of their gear is that due to the meticulous and dedicated maintenance and preservation of their armor and gear, these items are the same ones they used 10,000 years ago. The custodians do not age biologically, so some of the veterans in the Guard may be several thousand years old. And unlike the Space Marines, they fight entirely as a solo force. When a line of custodians is holding back waves of enemies, they operate independently. There are no battle formations. There
Fair
are no
enough.
squads tactics. Each custodian is the main character, trailed by serfs and servants.
But just imagine
tasked
sending out, like,
entirely to reload
a couple
their
hundred
aim.
of them
They
to
fight with
a battle,
singular
like,
purpose, if not action. Groups of custodians
how would that
will dispatch
turn the
enemy
tide
after
of
their spears coming
the
within
war and
inches
stuff like
of
that?
each other, but never close enough for a killing blow. Their strikes are intentionally defensive, allowing their opponents to attack 1 to 2 times before parrying and ending their lives. Each strike deflected is an opportunity to know their enemy more and learn from their patterns. They are truly the
pretty smart.
Emperor's bodyguards, masters of close combat, enemy knowledge, and reactions measured in milliseconds. Though the custodians are a part of the Adeptus Terra, the members of the Guard only answer to their own leadership and the Emperor himself. The leader of the custodians is known as the Captain General, and individual squads of custodians are overseen by a shield as their focus.
Okay, yep, so they got some
Their
sort of
command center
structure.
is located within the palace. The Tower of Hegemon serves as their primary base of operation, but there is a dedicated elite guard of custodians known as the Companions that stands strong by the Emperor's side. In total, the custodians are 10,000 strong, and when a member retires, their name is added to the Hall of Name and vanish across the galaxy in a cloaked disguise to serve as eyes and ears for the Emperor.
Interesting.
Despite their numbers and their strength,
Okay.
the members of the custodians do not consider themselves to be soldiers or warriors in any way. They see themselves strictly as the guardians of the Emperor in all facets.
Okay.
This
That makes
extends
sense.
beyond the physical. Custodians believe they represent the guarding of the Emperor's ideals and philosophies.
Right.
Their gains are both physical and literary. They are the protectorates of everything the Emperor stood for, and in doing so, the custodians are also artisans and scholars, in addition to being the golden guard of the golden throne. However, due to this nature of being protectorates, they have a very strong view when it comes to the Space Marines and the Primarchs. The Emperor himself had insinuated many times that once the galaxy was brought to heel, that there would be no need for the Space Marines anymore, and they were to go the same way.
That was the Thunder Warriors. Interesting.
The custodians were meant to be the judge, jury, and executioner.
So kind of like what Space Marines did to the Thunder Warriors.
Designed not only to be able to take down Space Marines with ease, but to be able to go toe-to-toe with the Primarchs. During the heresy, the custodians mused on how suspiciously easy it was to kill Chaos Space Marines, as if they were trained and made for that explicit purpose. Constantine Valdor, one of the closest advisors of the Emperor, was asked if he ever disagreed with BG on something, and he said once, with the formation of the Primarchs.
I feel I do my best, but they don't.
Let me ask you a very fair question. What do you do successfully? Quickly.
I hate that I hate that every time we're in Untouched, the conversations are about me.
And besides the trained distrust for Space Marines, the custodians also have evidence for their distrust. The Horus Heresy saw half of the chapters fall to chaos and turn traitor against the Emperor. In the mind of a custodian, the fact that half of the Space Marines fell before means that the other half
could do it as well.
They are fully capable of wiping out literally any force put against them, and in a sense are the final representation of the Golden Age. However, they are forced to stand in silent and blind service to the Emperor and to the ill of the Imperium. And they, for 10,000 years, have stood vigil over the Imperium and have watched its rise and fall with the inability to do anything. While they do go out and fight some battles here and there, at the end of the day, the vastness of the Imperium means that the closest advisor to the Emperor himself are powerless to make any change. But goddamn, can they kill a space marine? For 100 years, I stood my watch amidst the somber shadows of the Sanctum Imperii. I was still as a statue, but always ready, always attuned to days.
Yeah, I mean, they're not wrong. I mean,
days,
if half
years,
the Space Marines and Primarchs turn traitor, we would be a little skeptical about the other half, you know?
For 100 years, I did not but wait. Yet had any threat appeared, I would have struck it down in a heartbeat. For 100 years, I stood my watch, and as it ends, I tell you this: patience is a weapon. Of course, a threat directly to Terra itself would appear to be something foolish. It's in the deepest parts of Imperial space, and is one of the most defended bastions in the galaxy. You truly have to be foolhardy or insane to think that you can take on Terra itself. However, one faction certainly got close. In the dark ages of the stars, and in a river of misery, there is one faction having
And who got close? And when was this?
The galaxy sees them as savages, yet they have already figured out the questions of the universe. Their numbers are uncountable, their technology incomprehensible, and yet their violence is so very
I see where this is going.
I am, of course, talking about the orcs are the pinnacle.
So when did they get close
For them, the great
attacking Terra?
They have evolved a society which knows no stress or angst. Who are we to judge them? We Eldar who have failed, or the humans on the road to ruin in their turn? And why? Because we saw answers to questions that an orc wouldn't even bother to ask. We see a culture that is strong and despise it as crude. During the war in heaven, the old ones were doing their best to spawn as many combatants
So I created the Eldar and the
seeding the
Quarks.
galaxy in a specialized sense. The Eldar were made to be a precise and tactical species to fight off the Catan and the Necrons. But another prominent species was made by them as well. The Quark were warriors clad in ornate armor with more dangerous weapons. However, things changed, and these warriors changed, and the Quark are no more. They are now known as the boys, the lads, the meats, the orcs. An orc in 40k looks like
they're still terrifying,
most
though.
other fantasy hulking, warlike monstrosities with big teeth and worse attitudes. However, unlike the more Tolkien-esque forms of these creatures, the devastating nature of the orcs is in their biology. Unlike most species in the galaxy, the orcs are actually a type of fungus. This fungus itself comes in various forms. The small goblin-like Gretchen and Spartans are a part of this fungus ecosystem as well, and also squigs, which can be used for basically anything. But regardless
squig
of
hunters and stuff, yep.
system, all of them are born for spores that land on the ground. As they travel around the galaxy, they drop spores literally everywhere, and then an orc dies, and they drop tons of fungal spores that allows for their numbers to be replenished over a period of time. Because of this, orcs are not only extremely prominent across the galaxy, but they are exceptionally resilient due to their growing size. Even if one orc lands on a planet, it will be nearly impossible to get rid of all of the orc presence unless the planet itself is completely destroyed. Even
Just
then,
one orc can do
they
all
might
that?
find a way to survive. Due to their fungal
That's
nature,
pretty impressive.
orcs don't really stop growing, and the more long-lived an orc is, the bigger they get, and the more an orc fights, the bigger they get. Of course, since they're constantly grabbing scraps, an orc's life lifespan isn't necessarily that long, so the bigger orcs are hard to find. Though alongside this, however, they are a tribe-based species that is comprised of warbands, and the biggest and the strongest
is the leader.
The warband, known as the warbands. At the bottom end of the orc tribal system are the Gretchens and the Snubbers. These members act as the servants and slaves of the orcs, and sometimes their actual ammunition, despite being smarter and more cunning than their bigger presence.
They're killing fodder.
In orc culture, the biggest is the boss. The smallest gets picked on and thrown around. Beyond the warbands and the tribes, orcs also belong to a specific clan. Tribes constantly shatter and rebuild, but the clans do not. They are, in a sense, a psychological state of being for any given orc, and gives an orc their specific character and traits. And to make things easier, these clans are also color-coded, so that's very easy to tell what orc does. Though there are many clans out there, 6 of them are the most prominent and well-known. The Bad Moons are essentially the merchants and have a lot of money because their currency is teeth, and they grow teeth faster than any others. The Blood Axes are the stealth units, and by stealth it means like slightly more quiet than the others, and they have a love for lore-based stories. Death Skulls are the scavengers, and the Goths are the close combat specialists. And on the two ends of the spectrum, we also have the tech-savvy Evil Sons and the more traditionalist and tribal Snake Knights. Another major facet of orcs is their religious beliefs. They believe in 2 gods, Gork and Mork. Gork is cunningly brutal, and Mork is brutally cunning. The difference between them, according to orcs, is that Mork hits you when you aren't looking, and Gork hits you when you are. There's a lot of confusion as to which one is which, and this results in a lot of infighting. In other species, this would be considered a sort of religious conflict, but for the orcs, it's just another excuse to fight.
Pretty much.
I have a quote here, but I don't.
Any reason they can fight, they will.
So I'm going to get my co-host, if that's ridiculous, to read this one, and I'll try to lip sync.
Oh, he's more cunning than a grunt and more killing than a dread. The boys that follow me can't be beat. On Piscina was jumped the Marines boys, and our boss post was covered in the helmets we took from the dead in we burned their ports and killed their bosses and left nothing but ruins behind. I'm Warlord Gazgul Macrock, and I speak with the word of the gods.
It's actually pretty good.
Stomp the universe flat and kill anything.
That is actually pretty good.
We's gonna do this, cause we're orcs. And
I mean, that would actually be pretty terrifying if that was like his actual voice.
Fighting is the biggest aspect of orc, and it's essentially their life's purpose. They are genetically hardwired to get into battles and scraps with enemies that can feel pain. The more they fight, the bigger they get. This, combined with them getting bigger over time, means that some of the biggest and baddest orcs of all time have been notably gigantic. The Beast, as he was known, was about the size of an Imperial Knight. If an orc runs out of other enemies to fight,
the size of an Imperial Knight?
Fighting to scratch the battle itch. For example,
I gotta learn more about him. The Beast?
A planet exists where a band of orcs
Wow.
are in a constant state of war and battle, and have been for a incredibly long amount of time, strictly because how much Khorne enjoys himself watching. For some, being trapped in a perpetual war planet for all eternity would be a fate worse than death. But to the boys, this is heaven.
This is
in the
great.
event of a particularly big battle, a massive amount of tribes and warbands will unite under what is known as the Wall.
Yep.
The concept of a wall covers a few bases. The first is the group aspect of the massive green tidal wave of orcs fighting for the same cause, the cause being the second base. But the most prominent aspect of the Wall is the psychic aspect. Remember how the old ones made the Eldar and all the Eldar are psychic? Well, the orcs are too, kinda, but just not as much. Only a little bit of it. And they often don't know how to use it, and frankly don't care.
Okay,
But
that
a
explains
huge
it.
gathering of orcs generates a psychic field that allows orcs to be more organized, dangerous, and dedicated to the war-based cause. However, the true extent of the psychic energy and its usage is relatively unknown. But that doesn't matter considering the outcome 90% of the time. In a similar sense, their ragtag technology and weaponry is also a mystery to most who encounter encounter it purely because of that raw energy. The technology the orcs use seem to be held together with duct tape.
They got great technology.
And crude doesn't even begin to describe.
What do you mean?
Their guns seem to have an inordinate amount of ammunition and firepower, and they are seemingly able to put things together on the fly in the middle of combat. The Imperium is of the mind that the orcs' weapons and machinery
Master crafters right there.
But realistically, orc gear hardly works in the first place. Weapons blow up in a Bugs Bunny-esque manner all the time, and their war buggies can collapse in the middle of battle. Just because it works a handful of times does not mean
all
it's
the
an
time.
effective weapon. But this doesn't stop the orcs and their green tide. To really understand the power of the water energy, orcs can operate purely off of belief. Now, a misconception is
There's
that
a lot I
orcs
didn't know about
believe
orcs.
something is real and it happens. But that isn't true, because that's just one. However, there's never one. There's normally a few billion orcs together,
And when they all believe
something is true, the warp will tend to respond with a positive green light.
Oh,
Sometimes.
okay.
Do
Green light.
the red ones go faster? Well, with enough orcs, yeah. How does an orc buggy with an engine block that's just a boulder with vroom vroom written in chalk work? Who cares? Orcs breathing on a ship with a hull breach? Go ahead. An orc went back in time to kill a version of himself so he could have two of his favorite weapons. It is shenanigans. Because of their actions and aesthetic, the orcs tend to be presented in a comic relief sense in a lot of media. Particularly the media from their perspective. They are bumbling and loud and goofy British football hooligans, and they say silly things and act in silly ways. But to the citizens of the Imperium,
They're terrifying.
the orcs are far from
Yeah.
funny. They are violent and
they're
irrational
still
creatures that take
big,
humans for punching bags,
green,
slay,
strong
or ultimately dinner.
orcs.
They have no
You
moral
know.
purpose and are violent and brutal
Yeah.
killers that know nothing else. They are genetically designed to be a
Even if they're
violent
dumb, like this
species
giant,
capable
like,
of beating back
7-foot
and
jack dork, even with an
and if
axe.
the orcs were
Still pretty
ever
terrifying.
able to unify under one banner, they would be utterly unstoppable. However, due to their aggressive nature, their organizational skills
Right, they
are
can't
non-existent,
organize.
and they tend to just beat each other up.
Mm-hmm.
All that exists in the mind of an orc is fight and nothing else. If they wipe out their enemies, they will inevitably wipe themselves out.
'Cause there's no one else to fight.
They are a brutal Ouroboros doomed to an endless war cycle. But to an orc, why does it matter? If they fight and they win, they win. If they fight and they die, it was a good fight. Now that the Xenos armies are growing in
There you go.
strength and more are threatening the safety of the Imperium, they need to bring new methods in order to handle what they are currently facing.
Okay.
The Emperor is on the golden throne. Half the Space Marines are a traitor, and they are beset with enemies within and without. So now the Lords on Terra must prepare for anything possible, and sometimes the impossible. For that, they take to the stars to explore and expand. They recruit assassins for priority eliminations. They train a galactic police force and a secret police to root out any enemies.
Ah, here we go.
The
Yep.
lesser known, yet most feared.
Okay, so that was very interesting. That was very cool learning about, the Chaos Knights, obviously the Custodians, and a lot with the orcs. That was very cool to learn that much about the orcs and stuff like that. The Beast, that actually very much surprised me. I did not know that there was an orc that big. That is crazy. I wonder if I can pull up anything quickly on him. Warhammer 40k, the Beast, I guess. Let's see, what do we got here about the Beast? Because I would like to learn more about that. The Beast was one of the most powerful orc war bosses to have ever lived. He united much of the orc race and nearly succeeded in conquering the galaxy. Wow. His Wog was one of the largest the galaxy had ever seen and rampaged across the Imperium, eclipsing even the one Horus defeated during the Yulinar Crusade, which earned him the title of War Master. Wow. The Beast was highly intelligent orc, capable of speaking flawless Gothic. Wow. Embittered by the humiliation of the Orc race during the Yulinar Crusade, he intended to cripple humanity and rule the galaxy. The Imperium only halted his advance at a great cost and desperate measure, devastating the Adeptus Astartes. Wow. Damn. Beast of Beasts, Lesser Beast, History, War of the Beast. This must be... Yep. Combat, Imperium, Iron Warriors, Combatants, the Orcs, Commander, the Beast. Just the Beast. Oh my god. And the commanders on the Imperium, Vulcan, Lord Commander. There's a lot of them. Chapter Master Maximus Thane, Lord Hyrule Landson, Grandmaster Draken. I'm not even going to say like some of these names. Wow. Oh my god. Inquisitor, Chapter Master, Wolf Lord, Chapter Master, First Captain, Grand Master. Wow. Knight Abyssal, War Master. Wow. Okay, I gotta learn more about the War of the Beast. Because that seems like that was a huge battle. You got the Imperium and the Iron Warriors against the Orcs. Well, I mean, it looks like there was definitely way more. Strength, majority of the Orc race. Imperial Guard, Imperial Navy, Space Marines, Mechanicum, Fraterus Templars, Sisters of Silence, and the Grand Company. Casualties, extremely heavy for the Orcs. And for the Imperium, billions. Heavy for the Adeptus Astartes. Wow. Grand Company. What is the Grand Company? Is a combat unit within the Iron Warriors Legion. Oh, okay. Interesting. What is the Fraterus Templars? Is a military order of the Ecclesiarchy for 7 centuries. Oh, okay. Interesting. Yeah, I gotta find a video. I gotta find a video on this. Because this sounds very interesting. The Battle of Terra, standoff with the Mechanicum, the return of Vulcan, the counterattack Yulinor, Rise of the Death Watch, return to Yulinor, one final effort, and then the aftermath. Wow. Damn. Yeah, you guys gotta find me a video, about the War of the Beast, and the Beast in general, because I definitely would like to learn more about him. You know, I had no idea there was an orc that big. Yeah, that sounds very interesting. But yeah, a lot of stuff about the orcs I did not know, so, yeah, that was very cool, you know, definitely learned a lot. Especially about the orcs, how fun they are and stuff like that. Yeah, they're goofy. They, you know, they got different tribes and clans and stuff like that. You know, they do fight each other and stuff. Knew that. You know, knew about the fungus. Although I didn't know one orc can spread so much fungus and stuff like that. That I'm kind of surprised. You know. But yeah, as funny of a race the orcs are, they're still pretty terrifying. You know, even if they are like dumb and goofy and power of make-believe and stuff like that, still like a 7, I don't know how big they are, 6, 7, 8 feet tall jacked green orc, even with a club or an axe, it's still pretty terrifying, you know. It's still pretty scary, you know. So yeah, that's very cool. But yeah, if you guys have any videos about the Beast or of the War of the Beast, let me know, because I definitely want to learn more about that, because that is really cool, you know. An orc the size of an Imperial Knight. Damn. So yeah, all right, so anyways, there we go. There is my part 2 of his part 2 of every single Warhammer 40k faction to re-explain. This is getting really good. I'm kind of curious to see what's next. Obviously Agents of the Imperium is next, and then whatever else we got still left. It looks like there's like, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more 5 more factions to go. So yeah, it's gonna be pretty cool. So yeah, like I said, if you guys have any videos about like the Beast, War of the Beast, definitely let me know because I want to learn more. But other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, hit that thumbs up button. That'd be awesome. Remember, feel free to subscribe to my channel. Follow me on social media. Links in the description box below. And of course, other than that, just stick around. More videos are on the way. And I will see you guys next time.